Good afternoon. I'm John Falchicchio, Deputy Mayor for Planning and Economic Development, and on behalf of Mayor Bowser, I want to welcome you to the Recovery Weekly Check-In. This week, we're excited to talk to you all about the return to the office. We've said return to work, but we know many have been working through the pandemic, and we want to talk about how we'll return to the office, including in the Central Business District. So before we begin, we wanted to talk a little bit about and remind everyone that Mayor Bowser just yesterday announced what our dialed up activities would look like as of May 1st. And so there's a couple of activities, including entertainment, ceremonies and meetings, fitness and pools, recreation, retail, libraries, and museums, all of which have new updated protocols when it comes time for that on May 1st. So if you missed those updates, you want to check out the path forward by visiting coronavirus.dc.gov and look at the situational update, which you can find in the newsroom on coronavirus.dc.gov. And we'll ask you to take a look at that and think about how you'll plan for your business to come back starting on May 1st. So we also announced just last month that we're targeting the beginning of May for really return to the office. So at March Madness, we talked about a couple strategies, and we've got partners here today to talk about those strategies, about the future of work and the importance of workers returning to the Central Business District to enhance the vibrancy of our downtown corridor. So today we'll cover some of the enduring topics of the COVID-19 pandemic and its impact on the Central Business District, our businesses, and how the bids and other companies are engaging with employers and businesses, and perspectives on the future of office work, conversions of office space, and what we're seeing in the Central Business District that's moving us closer to recovery and growth. And so with that, I want to introduce a couple of our panelists. But before I do that, I want to remind everybody that you can join the conversation, share with us a question or a comment. If you're on the phone line, you can press 0. But also on social media, use the hashtag DCHope on Twitter and Facebook, and that'll allow us to see your question or comment. And so with that, I want to introduce our first two guests, Neil Albert, who's the President and Executive Director of the Downtown DC BID, and Leona, I'm not going to do it. I'm not going to mess up your name. With a name like Falchicchio, you understand, who's the Executive Director of the Golden Triangle BID. So I want to thank them both for joining us, and I'll go with Neil Albert first, who's joining us remotely today. Neil?
Thank you so much, John. I am not going to say your name either because I'm sure you're going to mess it up. But thanks for having us today. And we at the Downtown BID and Golden Triangle BID, and actually all of our business improvement districts, are looking to the future, and so we're very happy that you're having this session today. Today we want to focus a little bit narrowly on the sort of the biggest portion of the downtown area, which is the Downtown DC Business Improvement District and the Golden Triangle. It does not exclude some of our other partners in the BID world, particularly our partners at the Capitol Hill BID, the Capitol Riverfront, Georgetown, and the Wharf, and the efforts that they're undertaking to help return to office in as quick a time frame as possible. And so let me give you a little bit of history and background, but I'm not going to spend a lot of time on it. So a lot has been said of the pandemic on not just the Downtown Business Improvement District, but the city at writ large. Our office vacancies are up. In our two bids, we are responsible for 90 million square feet of office, about 60% of the total office space in DC, and so obviously we have been heavily impacted. Even before COVID-19, our vacancy rates were climbing. They're now about 20%. And we represent a significant portion of not just the city's real property tax revenue, but the city's gross revenue. Our estimate is a little over 11% of the city's revenues. And so John talked earlier about how we take a look at our commercial real estate in our bids with an eye towards repurposing, particularly those older buildings for other uses, and that's a work in progress. Prior to the COVID-19 pandemic hitting, everybody knows the stats about the use patterns of our rail system and our transit system. We're down 90 to 95% in ridership, and as John also suggested, many people are still working from home, only a 4%, but rising percentage working from their office. Foot traffic about a year ago was teetering between 3 and 5% downtown. It's moving up, and particularly as the weather gets warmer, we're seeing between 10 and 15% increase in foot traffic downtown. So we're seeing signs of progress. So we think the city has done a really good job, and so I really want to sing their praises for a few seconds, not just the district government, but also the federal government and some of our bids in helping to really build a bridge from the impact of the COVID-19 pandemic to the future, which my colleague Leona will talk about shortly. And so DC government did everything from relaxing the regulatory environment to ensure that businesses that needed to access the sidewalks and create streeteries could do it. They were forward-thinking in really deeming some industries, particularly the construction industry, as essential service. And again, on the forefront in just rolling over business permits. But all that's good, but unless you provide people with funding, they can't exist. And so, to Mayor Bowser's credit, there's $154 million in grant funding that went to our small businesses, our local businesses, which again are acting as a bridge to the future. The Downtown DC bid just recently did a $1 million grant targeted to businesses in our neighborhood, which we hope would also help. And then everyone knows all of the wonderful funding that has come down the pike from the federal government, including now 3 rounds of stimulus. So moving on, I would experiencing the first signs of recovery in the downtown DC area, but still a lot left to go. Where do we see those signs? So, for example, in the downtown DC bid itself, we just had 2 really great restaurants open. Yardbird, someone was talking to me about it over the weekend, and Cheesecake Factory opening in downtown. We have museums that are reopening. The National Museum of Women in the Arts and Planet Word are planning actually are reopening. And then we reach out to our stakeholders to sort of find out what their plans are for the future. And we're hearing that there are potential openings in April and May from the Capital One Arena, the DC Improv. There are a number of hotels that are planning to reopen, including the Marriott Marquis, the Madison Hotel, and others. And then a number of restaurants that closed because of the pandemic are also planning to reopen, including some of my favorites. I'm not going to call them by name, but you may be able to see them on your screen. And then I think a big driver of foot traffic downtown is our Smithsonian museums and their conversations about them opening up soon. So we do a regular survey of our stakeholders just to get a sense as to when people are thinking of coming back downtown. We're a little based on our most recent survey, we expect that 30 to 50% of office workers will be back in the office by Labor Day, and that's just what we're hearing now. I'm sure as vaccine rollouts move on successfully, that number will go up. There are a couple of things that need to be in place for that to happen, including the health metrics trending in the right direction. So please listen to Dr. Nesbitt. Metro rail safety precautions are being in place, and then finally people having really good child care and schools are being reopened. So the last thing I'll share with you is that, all of our bids have really a shared vision for growth here, not just in the downtown and Golden Triangle areas, but throughout the city. In 2020, we had a really strong road that, as my partner Jerry would say, that helps you lead the social investment that the city is so generous about. And so we're hoping to return to that level of robust growth that we saw in 2020 that will help create a path to the middle class and fund the equitable growth that DC is so well known for. And so with that, I'm going to turn it back to John to introduce Leona, who will talk a little bit more about some of the recovery efforts that our bids are undertaking. So thank you so much for listening.
Okay. Thank you, Neil. Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Leona Agaritis, and I'm the Executive Director of the Golden Triangle Bid and Neil's partner. Neil talked to you about the big picture, and I'm going to talk to you a little bit about on the ground some of the things that we and other bids have been doing. Fundamentally, the first thing that we've been doing is our core businesses. If you look at the slide on, if you pull the slide up, please, you will see that the ambassadors, the people in yellow in the Golden Triangle who have been taking care of the streets, and the SAMs, the people in red, have been doing their core work. And you see them here 3 of the 4 seasons of the year taking care of the neighborhoods. In addition, we have been landscaping, and here you see a beautiful picture of the Connecticut Avenue median. Our goal really is to keep the neighborhood beautiful and attractive for people who are there every day and for people who will be coming back. Both of our bids and many of the other bids have been also very committed to homeless services, and helping people into permanent supportive housing is a big goal of ours. And we have been sustaining that program throughout the COVID pandemic. Here you see a picture of one of the Golden Triangle workers through Pathways to Housing, and you also see a picture of the Downtown Services Center, which is the downtown bid and the District of Columbia partnership. And we've been, doing things from providing hand sanitizer to helping people get tested, and now finally to vaccines. The next thing, however, that I want to talk about is, I think, going to be critical to people feeling like there is a safe return back, and that is activating our outdoor spaces. People feel more comfortable outdoors than they do inside, and I think it's going to be important for them to know that that safety valve is there for them. And one of the pictures that you see on the screen is from a couple summers ago, but the point here is that in May, we in the Golden Triangle are going to install seating in our 6 parks so that people who are either passing by or working or coming down for a doctor's appointment or whatever can sit outside a little bit and enjoy food from some of our retailers safely. Below that, you see a streetery, which the downtown bid started on 8th Street back last summer. And, the streeteries are popping up all over the District of Columbia, and a lot of them have been joint ventures between the bids and the district government and, of course, all the restaurants. Neil talked a little bit about art, and as the museums, many of them have been closed, we've been bringing art onto the street for people to enjoy. And during the COVID pandemic, so far we've put up 4 pieces of art, and we intend to put an additional 4 over the next couple of months on our streets so that people can, pass by and enjoy something very beautiful and an unexpected encounter. And then finally, and unfortunately, a lot of small retailers have suffered throughout, the country and the district, and including in the downtown and Golden Triangle areas. And so we've been putting art by local artists on the windows. It's so much nicer to look at than a for lease sign. So those are some of the things that we've been doing for activation. The next slide is, I think, absolutely critical for people. People want to feel safe. And so we have, you see 2 slides there where we have very, very narrow sidewalks, and a lot of people use these sidewalks every day. And so we've worked with DDOT to widen those sidewalks and make it easier for people to walk without feeling like they are smashed up against other people. So we think that is really important and will be more so when people start to come back. And, we've never been in a pandemic before. We have never come back to the office. If you're listening to this, you haven't experienced this. So there are lots of questions and lots of anxieties. And so one thing that we have done is to create a webinar series. And it's not only for Golden Triangle businesses or Golden Triangle employees or organizations, but really it is open to people who want to listen. We've been trying to bring in experts to deal with questions that employers may have. How does COVID affect HR policies? How does it affect insurance? How do you come back? How do you stage a comeback? What are buildings doing to keep me safe when I go back to my office building? So we've held several of those, and we will continue to hold them monthly for the next few months to kind of help answer people's questions. The final thing is, I do think the future is bright. Like Neil said, we have a lot of vacancies now, unfortunately, but we will all get through this, and we have plans, and we have a lot of faith and love for the District of Columbia. And one of the big treasures that we have is Pennsylvania Avenue, west of the White House, and I like to call it America's Forgotten Street. But since the White House, since Penn has been closed at the White House, the west side has really kind of needed a little bit of an upgrade. And if you look at that slide on the screen, you see what the street looks like today. It's a lot of asphalt. It's more asphalt than you need. And so DDOT has been working on construction drawings for the street that will add protected bike lanes, better pedestrian crossings, rain gardens, more green space, better bus stops, and things like that. And they will be starting work on that in fiscal year 22. Of course, the Golden Triangle will be working hard to activate the parks along the corridor. And then finally, and I think this is super exciting, we are pursuing, in partnership with the university, GW University, and Mayor Bowser's team, the creation of an innovation district there. And when you step back, you think about it, this is a renowned university, right? There's a med school, there's a hospital, there is a world-renowned public health program, a surprisingly amazing innovation and entrepreneurship program. And if we leverage that asset, we can really, really help fill the vacancies. We can create jobs. We can do job training. We can attract companies that want to work with the university on research, and we can keep the tech startups that emerge here and move other places. And so I think this is a wonderful plan for the future, and honestly would be happy to answer any questions when we turn to the audience for questions. Thank you.
Well, thank you. Neil and Leona, thanks for your partnership throughout the pandemic. And I know there are folks who will have questions or comments about what you've said, so you can press 0 or you can use the hashtag DCHope. And I want to bring in our next guests who are joining us, who are also partners with us, and excited to showcase their work because really return to work is going to happen in a lot of different forms and fashions. And so our next 2 guests are going to talk about what they've done to help people think about the workplace and how to make it safe and how to get employees engaged again. So with that, I want to bring in Christina Fursley from WeWork. She's the head of public affairs and communications. and also Alison Mcdougall, who's the co-founder and COO of Workshoe. So we'll go to Christina first to kick us off. Tell us a little bit about what WeWork is doing and our new partnership with WeWork.
Thanks, John. It's great to be here. Great to be back in DC. I spent 15 years, so I don't know if I ever told you that. First, I'd love to thank everyone who's been working throughout the pandemic to get us to the point where we are, and that's helping with the recovery moving forward. Leona, some of the points you brought up are just incredible, and my deepest gratitude to all of you. It's not a question that COVID-19 has fundamentally shifted the way we think of the office. I like to say that work-life kind of just became life overnight. And as we look to the future of work, we're really trying to reimagine a workplace that is resilient, that works both for employers and employees, and takes us into the future. So if we can go to the next slide, just briefly on WeWork. We are one of the largest global flexible space providers in the world with over 55 million square feet across 38 countries and 150 cities. We are trying to make sure that that space moving forward is safe, safety focused, is flexible, and is allowing employers to really think thoughtfully about how they want their future workforce to look. We are seeing more and more that a hybrid, flexible model is what most employers are looking for, what most businesses are looking for, roughly 2.5 days a week. I'll get a bit more into that data a little bit further in the presentation. But really, and if you'll go to the next slide here, what WeWork has been trying to do is focus on the big picture. We're trying to focus on building partnerships with different cities, including DC, which we were proud to announce, I think, just the week before last, and collect data and analyze that data, see what's working, what's not working, to eventually lend to a national effort. As I mentioned, these public-private partnerships, we believe, are so critical to making sure that our future model of work, our future ways of working, are resilient, foster economic recovery, and in turn, grow and thrive big cities across the nation and across the world. So if we do turn to the next slide, I'll speak a bit about what we've been doing in DC. We partnered with DC the week before last to provide incentives to help businesses and individuals of all sizes return to the office in a way that works for them. We have over 10 locations in DC that are providing this incentive with 15,000 desks and over 1 million square feet. And what's really unique here is the type of ways you can engage with WeWork. So we have our private office space, which is if you want that dedicated office for you and your colleagues. We also have an all-access type of product, which is a WeWork card that'll get you into any DC location you want, anytime you want. You can do more of a hub and spoke model that way for your businesses. And we also have an on-demand, which is, for lack of a better way to put it, sort of Uber for office space, where you can go on and book a hot desk or a conference room of your choice when you want it and just pay as you go. With all of these different types of products, and particularly in DC, a key part of our partnership is tracking the data. Again, seeing who's coming back to work, what type of businesses, what days, for how long, what's most important to them. Is it cleanliness? Is it productivity? Is it the Wi-Fi? Is it the printing? And understanding that so we can provide tools and data to these businesses to return people back to work in an efficient way and to foster that economic recovery and continue to grow. And if you'll turn to the next slide, I'll speak a little bit more specifically about our incentives. So for DC, we are providing a 1-month free trial of that all-access membership, that one where you can visit different DC locations. And then after your first free month, 15% off every month thereafter for up to a year. And then for more of that private space, if that's more suitable for your business, we are offering 2 months free off of a 6-month commitment and 3 months free off of a 12-month commitment. We're really hoping that these exclusive incentives to DC help businesses and individuals of all sizes in DC come back to work in a safety-focused and flexible way. And as I did mention, this is an effort where we're partnering with different cities, expanding nationally, hopefully soon. We did also partner with Miami, which was more tech-focused, and New York, which was more small business-focused. And the point of that is we're really trying to have conversations with cities around the country to understand what the priorities of that city is and align with those priorities so that these programs are effective. For DC, it was really to focus on that return to work for individuals and businesses of all sizes, and we are proud to do that. And I'll speak a bit to the data on the next slide, please. Thank you. So again, we launched this partnership about 2.5 weeks ago. what you're seeing here, and I have to give a shout out to my team, all the slides you saw today were created by them. This one I made myself, which is kind of why it looks like this. But what you're seeing
If you didn't
is
tell us, we wouldn't know.
what you're seeing is Monday through Friday here. Saturdays and Sundays aren't there, each specific bars. And about 10 work weeks, the tail end of January, all of February, and that first 3 weeks of March. So you're seeing those dips, right? And those are Fridays and Mondays. And then you're seeing the Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursdays go back up and dip. But what's really positive here is that growth. February's been more than January, and March so far more than February. And with this partnership, we're hoping to help continue that growth. On a national level, there are some data points here that you'll see, largely focused on small and medium-sized businesses. That's what SMB stands for there, are really what's leading this effort to return to work and are so critical to helping foster this economic recovery across the nation. So we're seeing 74% of those returning are non-enterprise, which means they're small, medium-sized businesses. We're seeing that 2.5-day return to work a week, mostly Tuesdays, Wednesdays, and Thursdays. And we're seeing a focus on small businesses to help foster that economic recovery. In addition to the work we're doing with businesses in DC, I do want to note that we are also working with the university and hoping to expand work with universities to help de-densify campuses and provide that bit of campus feel across our locations here in DC as universities are figuring out how to bring people back to campus more full-time. We hope to be a resource there as well. If you do and are interested in taking advantage of those incentives, if you're listening, it's we.co/WeWorkInDC, and happy to help however we can. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Christina. And I want to bring in our next guest, Allison Mcdougall from Workshoe. We're really excited about Workshoe and want to tell our audience a little bit more. I think most in our audience have probably heard about WeWork. Not as many yet have heard of Workshoe. So we're excited to have Allison to tell us a little bit more.
No, thank you guys so much for having us here today. The points that were mentioned in the beginning of the presentation are really timely and relevant. So we're really excited to kind of talk about Workshoe's journey, being a DC-based startup, but really along that journey, some of the data and the statistics that we have found that have really impacted how we've crafted our product, and then also some of the opportunities we believe it opens up for a city like Washington, D.C. So just to formally again to introduce myself, I'm Alison Mcdougall, co-founder and COO of Workshoe. Workshoe is a platform that partners with hotels and restaurants and turns their underutilized space into a network of bookable, flexible workspaces for remote professionals. We do this in an incredibly thoughtful way, making sure that we put health and safety first through our verification Trust 20 COVID safety certification process. But to just give a little bit of background about our origins, as I mentioned, founded in Washington, D.C., actually by my co-founder and CEO, Maisha Burt. We are both remote workers that have experienced the inefficiencies on what it's like to move about the city or work from home day in and day out, and not have access to affordable workspace, particularly if you had access to a traditional private office, back in 2018. And so one of the reasons why we kind of like to showcase our journey is being around since 2018, we've seen the evolution pre-COVID, we've seen the impact post-COVID, and really excited about what our product has the ability to support the hospitality industry as well as the professional arena. One point that we do like to highlight, since we are a DC-based company, and there has been a huge initiative around tech startups, is we're very proud to announce that we have raised a seed round of $2.5 million to allow us to scale effectively across the U.S. But that particular point really leads into this next slide of a lot of the data that we collected in order to make that fundraising journey possible. So some of the industry trends that we found is that, as we all kind of discussed earlier today, is that there's a drastic shift to hybrid work. 60% of employees expect to work remotely at least one day a week post-pandemic. But ultimately, you know, being able to have access to a space where they can be productive is key. Another area that we're seeing that is a huge shift that was also alluded to earlier today is the focus on cost savings. So I know Neil mentioned that there has been some data around the reduction of leases. And so these are just some of the main points that we have found, that 87% of executives expect to make changes to their overall real estate strategy. And 56% of companies plan to reinvest those cost savings into some type of a thoughtful remote work product. So that's where we're really excited to be able to provide any type of resources, insights, or suggestions just based off of the discussions that we're having with leaders, particularly since the discussions around reopening cities. If you go to the next slide. The other element that we've really dug into, what do the employees want? We know that this is kind of the lifeblood of a city, of an organization, employees or residents. So we found that 84% prefer flexible schedules, 66% work-life balance, 61% freedom to choose where and when they work, and 60% are really into eliminating that commute, as we have all probably experienced. Getting to and from in the area is a lot easier now. So what are some of the solutions that we can provide to be able to continue to prop up those stats? If you go to the next slide. So ultimately, our vision of what the future of work could look like, just again, based off of our experiences during this 2.5-year journey, one of the key main points that we really like to showcase is flexibility and optionality. Those are the two terms that I think will lead any organization, any city, any surrounding community into having really thoughtful and relevant solutions and offerings to the business community. Professionals want to be able to choose when and where and how they work. They should be able to choose the day, the aesthetic, the vibe, and we're really excited about, again, the feedback that we have received on that ability to be flexible. The second area that we think is a really cool space is the ability to lean into hospitality venues as workspaces and collaboration hubs. Neil also alluded to, he set this presentation up wonderfully, that the hotel and restaurant industry are coming back. And these are spaces that are designed to make people feel good, but they have a lot of square footage, and there's a great chance for people to kind of reimagine what local businesses could look like and how they want to utilize those spaces. So kind of getting creative and providing residents and business travelers a different way on how to kind of explore their city. The third area I would say is access to workspaces outside of just central business districts. As people have really kind of settled into their homes in that routine, this new routine, as we alluded to, the elimination of commute and all of the sustainability and green initiatives that brings, being able to access spaces that are closer to where people live, I think is going to be a trend and something that all cities and business leaders should definitely consider when they're coming up with the workplace strategy. And last is affordable and flexible workspaces for all. We believe all people should be able to have access to spaces for them to create, thrive. There was mentioned earlier that leaning into the innovation centers, the amazing tech startups that are coming out of this area, and being able to access spaces to be able to create and build is essential. And monetary investment shouldn't necessarily be the barrier for people to be able to get that done. So that's one of the 4 areas that we believe our vision of what future of work could look like. And if you just go to the last slide, just some key opportunities with us being a local company and having a unique perspective of understanding kind of the evolution of the city and where there's a lot of opportunity. We just like to provide a few key takeaways, stemming back to the last point, the equitable workspace for all DC residents, the getting creative on what workspaces could look like, really have an opportunity to boost the local economy by 2.4 by times 2 by activating different spaces. Supplying the underserved communities with access to Wi-Fi in places that they feel as though that they can create and do what they need to do in order to get that ball, move the ball forward. Increase city sustainability, lower greenhouse gas emissions by eliminating the commute, and overall coming up with creative ways that can lower the cost for the city's output, but still providing solutions that are really key for employees to, or local residents, employees, professionals to be able to do their jobs well, but also evolve into our new way of work. So thank you.
Great. So Allison, I'm going to ask the first question of you. For Workshoe, what was the experience before the pandemic and then into the pandemic? Because I got to assume that the idea was really ripe when office started shifting.
Yeah.
So tell us about kind of pre-pandemic versus in the pandemic and how you all made yourselves known in that time.
Yeah, pre-pandemic, we had a great footprint. We were in the DC area back then. We had a little bit of a different model. We exclusively worked with restaurants. The aspect of adding on hotels was a result post-pandemic, and saw a really great opportunity there on how to be able to support the hospitality industry as a whole by pairing two entities that are severely impacted by our new normal. So then we had a pretty robust restaurant inventory. We also had an opportunity to scale into Chicago and had a great membership base, a different user then, more of the entrepreneur, the creative, that person that was on the go, wanted access to drop-in space at a very affordable rate. Post-COVID, one of the things that we did, particularly during quarantine, was lean into our membership base and just listen to them, track the data trends on what type of experience would you like when we get out of that. And that was in April, so we had no idea at that time. And we packaged those responses and really created the Workshoe that you see today, where you have the ability to access our workspaces, drill down to the actual seat that it is that you're booking, just to kind of create that level of safety and security. We revamped our model on the type of spaces that we work with. And then I would say one of our biggest pivots is our customer base, with us leaning into enterprise customers and offering our services to corporations as an employee benefit, workplace strategy, or health and wellness initiative.
Okay. And so when you think about coming out of the pandemic, right? Because we hope with vaccinations increasing that we'll come out of the pandemic. What do you see as Workshoe's place in kind of the future of work as people think about their office?
We believe we're that sweet spot of what the definition of hybrid model is. We are that in-between of a traditional office space, maybe a traditional co-working space, and we kind of fit that sweet spot of that place that you want to go for a couple hours a day. Also, our ability to scale by partnering with existing real estate assets make it really easy for us to be able to be really anywhere. And we think there's a lot of opportunity within surrounding communities, suburban areas, where we have the ability to really get into the nitty-gritty of where people live and how they want to work, and also taking that resource that also supports that community, that city, by stimulating the economy of the nature of the spaces where people are working, because they are hospitality spaces that offer food and beverage. So it's an exciting time to be able to be at the ground level to kind of reshape what hybrid work could look like. And we believe we're just one of the many resources that go into an overall workplace strategy versus one or another.
And actually, I saw Chris shaking her head on a couple of those points. I wonder too, when you think about it as sort of an employee benefit, have you seen companies who have a traditional office space use WeWork as an employee benefit as we think about working from anywhere?
Short answer, yes. We're seeing hybrid models grow and grow. I think what's really unique about WeWork is that option to have a short-term lease, that's 6-month or 12-month or all access month to month. And I mean, we are literally all in this together. Some companies are going touch and go, and that flexibility is key. Others are looking at more of that hybrid model long-term and doing longer commitments. But all that, to Allison's point, we are figuring it out. Employers are figuring it out, and that flexibility, that power of flexibility, I think will be a theme moving forward, not even just for office space, for service industry as we know it.
Yep. Yeah. And Neil and Leona, you talked to the property owners, but you also talked to the employers. What are they seeing in terms of when we do get to a better level of vaccination, when we think people will be coming back to the office?
So we're hearing a lot, take this off. We're hearing a lot where people were saying definitely in September. You know, childcare is a big driver. Vaccinations are a big driver. We're also hearing, however, that people are going to start to come back slowly and organically over the summer, that there will be some little bit of dipping your toe in the water, and I think the stats that we saw earlier today are really bearing that out. And as I walk on the streets of the Golden Triangle, I am seeing more and more people, but I think it will be a slow progression, and I think then right after the schools open, I think at that point, I think we'll start to kind of really get there to the whatever that new normal looks like.
I will
And-
say to help, so a stat I'm not sure if I mentioned is as we measure what we call Net Promoter Score, what's important to our members who are in the space, we're seeing cleanliness and productivity be the two highest scores. To that end, we have had all our spaces audited by Bureau Veritas and received a certificate of conformity to show that it is safe, 6 feet apart, everything's cleaned. And to your point, Leona, I think that'll be critical to keep up moving forward and make sure that people do feel that safety, that sense of comfort in being in the office.
Yeah, and if I can add to that, because I think that's a really good point. If you are a tenant in a building, just like I think anybody going into a WeWork would be asking, you should ask your landlord what they've been doing, because I think you'll be surprised at some of the things, not only the social distancing, but also things rethinking their air handling systems and things like that. I mean, a lot has been done to prepare for a safe return, and knowledge is power, right? And the more people know, I think the safer they'll feel.
Well, and Allison, how have you navigated that too? Because with so many different office types, right, that you're creating, there's that issue of folks wanting that confidence, level of confidence in terms of the protocols that are in place. So how do you approach that? And then also for hospitality, they're also trying to manage limited capacity. So how do you sort of tackle those two aspects of it?
You know, it's great that you asked that, because that was one of the main areas we really flushed out post-lockdown, and really probably around this summer. And the two things that we've done as the company as a whole, we do have a partnership with an organization called Trust 20, which is a COVID health and safety certification process for restaurants and surfaces, backed by General Mills and Gordon Food Services. So we do have our locations go through that Trust 20 certification process. But the other element that we really just like to mention in discussions, as you guys all can attest to, is that the hospitality venues, particularly restaurants and hotels, have such rigorous health and safety standards. It really is a place that is monitored by, local health organizations to ensure that it's a healthy environment. And so, we like to just kind of allow people to just, again, reimagine, rewire their brains on in looking at options that can support whatever type of work experience that they're looking for. And then the element on the capacity, the one thing that even pre-COVID, we always worked with venues that had underutilized hours. So all of our spaces were always open, but we only signed partners onto the platform that opted in because they said, hey, yes, we're an all-day establishment, but, between the hours of 11 and 4, things are a little slow. And those are actually the hours that people tend to want to have that drop-in experience. So that's where that, pre-COVID, it clicked. Post-COVID, it's just a little bit more relevant. So as an organization, we work really close with all of our properties to figure out days and hours of the week that works best for them. And with our new qualifications in order to be listed on the platform, the square footage of these spaces, particularly in the hotel industry, are so large, they can always support additional people within the space and still provide the social distancing parameters within them as well.
Well, and I know Leona alluded to it in her presentation, but I think when we come back to the office, the time of us all being in the conference room that's behind Neil is probably, past time. Maybe that's not going to come back, especially not right away. So when you think about outdoor, how does outdoor weigh in on this? And I wonder if WeWork has thought about this, if Workshoe has thought about how outdoor kind of really fits into the future of return to the office, especially in the immediate.
Sure. So many of our WeWorks do have outdoor space available that you can reserve, similar to how you reserve a conference room. And we will actually be highlighting those now that the weather is getting nicer throughout the month. I know a few of our locations in DC have that space. We're also looking at different ways to utilize outdoor space within neighborhoods, within communities, and help communities bring people back downtown that way. If there are programs in DC that we can get involved in, we'd be more than happy to help as well. I personally am looking forward to outdoor dining remaining and sidewalk cafes that never existed before being around, which will also hopefully help foster the economic recovery that cities need. And I'd be fascinated actually to hear, Allison, if you're thinking about that at all.
Yes, one of the biggest feedback loops that we received from our membership base once around that April-May timeframe was the ability to access outdoor workspace. So actually one of the requirements to be on our platform is that you have to offer outdoor workspace. So when members do sign on to our platform, they actually can see the physical floor plan, and they can see the indoor spaces as well as the outdoor spaces and how many seats are readily available, who else has booked that particular seat. So if you want to make an informed decision on making sure that you have distance from that person, that they can make that educated choice. So outdoor dining and seating is paramount to our workspace strategy, both here in all cities that we're breaking into.
Neil, I've never seen you so shy. How are you thinking about outdoor, especially as we aim towards May and beyond?
Yeah, so as I was listening to Chris and Allison, I do think it's an important sort of next step in bringing people back to downtown is to offer the safe outdoor spaces, not just for dining, but for working. And as they were speaking, I was thinking there's a partnership with BID waiting to happen around this. As you may recall, last year we did this wonderful dine out on 8th Street that was a multi-restaurant destination dining experience that really brought people not just from downtown DC, but from all over the DMV to take advantage of the weather and good food. It would be great if we could expand that into a number of areas anchored around specific restaurants and office clusters to provide that space. So I'd love to have a follow-up conversation about how we can partner with these two organizations to make that happen this spring and summer in DC.
So right now, and Leona mentioned streeteries, and I know we've talked about it in the conversation, we know that there are 833 streeteries around the district. I always say that's a great sign of kind of the innovation that has happened to get us through the pandemic, including, the great majority of those are actually restaurants, whether they are restaurants with a liquor license or restaurants that are more fast casual that don't have a liquor license, but over 800. So how do we think about, the central business district and beyond for work as well? So I don't know what the term will be. If a streetery is supposed to be a street that you eat on, if it'll be a workery or what, but we'll come up with that. I know Neil has a lot of smart people at the downtown BID who will help us think through that. But Neil, you are also embarking upon a renovation of Franklin Park. Have you thought about how that would actually be a workspace for folks? I know Leona mentioned the parks, the 6 parks in the Golden Triangle BID, but Franklin Park in particular, have you added any elements to make that easier as a place for work?
Yeah, so even before the Franklin Park was undergoing renovation, in the spring, summer, the downtown BID offered work hours in the park, and there was it was well attended. We had a partnership with Comcast to make that possible. We're gonna, once the park is open, we'll make sure that happens again. But we also have a cafe, restaurant that will be in the park. So one of the components of the park that will be accessible to the public. Again, not just for their dining pleasure, but for their working pleasure. Joe, I want to get back to something that you talked about a little earlier because so I do think people are creeping back into the office. So when the pandemic shut us all down, 3 to 5% of people were working for the office. Our last survey suggested that we're closer to 10 to 15% people coming downtown every day for work. And as Leona said, once there is widespread vaccination and people feel safe, I have a feeling that those numbers are going to grow exponentially rather than slowly. And so and I'm not saying that we shouldn't plan for the wonderful outdoor workspaces, but I think we should plan for this to be a complement to the traditional workplace setting that we've had in the past.
No, I think that's definitely the right. I see Leona shaking her head too. Leona, do you see that same office utilization rate? And I think it was Chris who said that Tuesday through Thursday is kind of where we see the most utilization.
No, absolutely, and that's what and we've seen it in buildings in the Golden Triangle, and that's what we expect is going to be the lasting when people go to hybrid. In fact, for years we've had an event in Farragut Square, a whole day takeover of the square. Every Friday, we called it Farragut Friday, and we're thinking, we need to rethink Farragut Friday, and it might have to be, Farragut Thursday or something like that in the future. But certainly, yes, and I think we're all expecting the same thing.
And we've actually been debating that a little bit in the office too, whether we think we should, because if people are coming on Tuesday through Thursday, should we make that sort of incentive on Monday and Friday where maybe people don't want to come as much?
Right, because
so
what
I'm
are the
throw
impacts?
That out to
No, I think that's absolutely a critical question because, Allison talked a little bit about the impacts to the climate, the impacts to, public transportation, traffic, and everything. I think that's totally valid. Do we look at ways to incentivize coming in on Mondays and Fridays so that we can spread out and ease the impacts on our different infrastructures?
Okay. I saw Allison and Chris shaking their heads too.
Yeah, a CBRE study did show, just to your earlier point about that, is it going to be traditional or is it going to complement? But 86% of businesses surveyed by CBRE said they'd have some sort of flexible model in the future. And then I think a JLL survey was 30% of office space will totally be flexible. But what we are seeing is assigned days. You'll see the majority, almost like how schools have those pods, businesses having those assigned days for different workers, those choosing Mondays, doing the Mondays, and just it's a little less than. We're also seeing Wednesdays being the day that's remote to make sure that people don't bookend. It's per business and it's per type of business, right? So you'll see the financial industry probably lean more towards that 5-day a week, but maybe 6 hours in the office and home, whereas companies that can allow that Tuesday through Thursday and still be productive have that happen. But all to say, yes, I think it will be a mix of that traditional office space, then complemented with more of a hybrid model and allow for the flexibility of companies to decide what works for them. And that ability to be flexible being where companies like WeWork, flexible space providers, can play a critical role.
And just to kind of piggyback off that, I think it's just such a great opportunity for a city like Washington, D.C. to lean into the remote days. So knowing that, that was referenced of the pods or the 2 days a week that you're going into the office, there's the whole population that is remote. And some, remote environments are great, some are not so great. Sometimes you just need a few hours. And, I think organizations, whether it's a company or government, thinking through the whole strategy on when you're in the traditional spaces, you have that experience. But when you're home or you're remote, what options do you have? And we fully embrace that entire experience. I think people really will start to realize that the evolution is really being embraced, and people have choices even the days that they are not physically walking into their offices, even though we all know that those are always going to be the historic headquarters and home bases of when you really corral and come together.
Great. And I know we had a Facebook question from Marcia. I think we kind of handled that in the conversation. I want to bring in some of our callers. So Kevin first. Kevin, your line should be open.
This is Kevin Clinton, Federal City Council. Thanks so much for having me on. Perhaps it's a case of spring or the nice weather, but in conversations that I've had with my colleagues and others who I work with, I'm increasingly hearing about people say they miss the experience of being downtown, they miss their colleagues, they miss their favorite restaurants. What do you say to people who are thinking about coming back perhaps they've been vaccinated, but they're not quite sure. Is downtown ready? What would the experience be like? What do you say to people who are uncertain?
Can I take
Yeah.
that one? Sure. I think, Kevin, I think downtown is ready. I think if they have concerns, they should talk to their landlord to find out what the landlord has been doing. Like I said earlier, I think they're going to be really pleasantly surprised at the measure that the landlords are putting in, from social distancing to additional disinfecting to air handling systems and other, massive investments in the building to make it safer. The transit system, Metro is operating. I took it to come here today. The outdoor spaces are open and available, and there are places where people can go and, get a cup of coffee or get a lunch or whatever it is that they want to do. So yes, by all means, and I have seen more and more people the last couple of weeks, on the street. It's kind of a nice experience. It's like visiting without the crowds. So.
Neil, what's your advice to folks who say, is it time to come back yet?
Yeah, I think, as people have to make their individual decisions, but I think as vaccines are ramping up, we are seeing more people downtown, particularly last week. I don't know if it was because of the cherry blossoms in town, but there were more tourists on the street. And I would agree with Leona. It's a sort of a building by building experience, but most of the property managers that we talk to are taking some of the most drastic measures to ensure that people could work in their buildings safely. COVID has forced them to retrofit their buildings so that it's safe to be there. And our retailers depend on people coming back downtown and working downtown. So for the love of a restaurant and other retailers, please come downtown.
And I think to Neil and Leona, I think the investment that people have put into the workplace to make sure it's safe and the health protocols are in place, I think is something that we need to continue to sort of stress and make sure. You're right, like people can just ask. If they don't know, they should definitely ask their property manager, what has been put in place in order to make it safer.
We mentioned the webinars we've been doing, and the one that we had on what is your building doing, where we featured a number of landlords and then a number of tenants to talk about how they design their workspace, was our most watched webinar. I mean, it far exceeded everything else. I mean, it was hundreds and hundreds of people watched that. So I think that tells you the interest that people have in knowing that.
So let's bring in our next caller, Beth. Beth, can you hear us?
Hi, this is Beth Ball with Premier Workspaces. I just wanted to jump on and really encourage those who do want to come back. There are a lot of open spaces in buildings, such as rooftops, lobbies, outdoor eating areas. We've gone to the extent, even with the building, to make sure we have our tape measure out to ensure everybody's happy. And they feel safe in these environments. I definitely agree that the building and each tenant within has to have a plan to encourage people to, that they have something to look at, to feel safe to come back to the workplace. But I do agree everybody's getting a little antsy to come back and make sure it is safe. So I like, like Fun Day Friday and move on to Monday for, fun times and get us back into the workplace that works for everybody. So I really appreciate you all having this call and the feedback, but I do, we are definitely seeing people wanting to come back into the office on flexibility with its month-to-month, 3, 6, or 12 terms, hourly bookings for the day or evening or weekend. So it's been great having that flexibility for people while they're at home. So thank you for having this call.
Definitely, thank you. And I think you cut out a little bit. I think you were paying too much compliment to the work that everybody here has done. But definitely, I think the big thing that we want to make sure is that employees still have that flexibility in order to understand, like, what is the the health protocols that are put in place, and then also what is the flexibility in scheduling too, because the demands at home haven't gone away, because we know school and daycare are still huge challenges. So we don't want to downplay that as well. Let's go to one more caller, Jonathan. Jonathan, your line should be open.
Hi there. Thanks so much for doing the call. My name is Jonathan Grobus. I live in Ward 6 and work at a medium-sized business down near Metro Center. I'm on our kind of back to office committee, and we're talking through a lot of the issues that you all discussed, and want folks back in the office. I would be interested to hear from the panel about advice on how to talk to employees in a way, because obviously these are sensitive issues, and want people to feel comfortable and respected as we're asking them to come back, and certainly, most importantly, safe. So any advice that you have as we're communicating with our employees would be really helpful.
Yeah, well, I think you ended with the number one thing, right, which is communication. I think being clear with employees that you value their safety, that you will not, be putting them into a position where they would be unsafe, and I think communicating that consistently. I think answering their questions about, vaccines, answering their questions about what the landlord is doing, and then what you as an employer are doing. Do you have possibility or ability to, we're lucky enough that we can give our employees right now individual offices, but are you putting them into a shared space? Are there individual offices? Can you stagger your hybrid work days in such a way that people can? I think Allison or Christine talked about pods, right? But can you create something like that so that people can be distanced? I think, I also think that you should talk to your attorney and to your HR people because there are certain things related to privacy and vaccines that I think employers should be aware of and should respect. But it all really, I think, comes to communicating with them, hearing their questions, because like I said earlier, we've never gone back from a pandemic before, and we don't know all the answers. So just creating this dialogue whereby they can ask things, because you might not have thought of them. And I think that's just, a good model to keep, to continue to work through.
So one of the things that Neil alluded to was the Smithsonian and making sure that the Smithsonian opens back up. So I'm going to ask Tatiana to help us because I'm going to ask a trivia question here. And if you're viewing on Facebook, you could put in the chat right now, what do you think the number of visitors to the Smithsonian was in 2019? So the number, and it's in the millions, how many visitors were to the Smithsonian's? So I'm going to ask Tatiana to check out the chat, and we'll see who gets the closest to it. But before we give the answer, let's hear a final word from each of our panelists. We'll start with Neil.
Well, again, thank you, John, for putting this forum together. And as I said earlier, the downtown DC's economy is critical to the district's economy as a whole, and having our daytime traffic tremendously will certainly help with the recovery, but I also see this as an opportunity to sort of rethink how we do office downtown, and there were some really great ideas that came out today that I'm hoping that not just the downtown bid and the Golden Triangle bid, but the other bids in the city can partner to make the new work reality more comfortable and inviting for folks. So thanks for having me on this call.
Well, and Neil, what's your guess for Smithsonian?
I would say it's over 2 million. The exact number I don't know.
All right, Leona, why don't you give us your final thought and then your guess as well.
Oh my. Well, I do agree with Neil. I think it's an opportunity to rethink, and I think that there will be a lot of change. And with change, as long as you have vision and can rethink, I think hopefully it's for the better. I do also think, though, that there is, an emotional element to this. we all love this city. And I think that as we think about coming back, I think we all have a part, not just the mayor's team and others, but we all have a part in trying to recreate and make better this beautiful place. And so I hope that we come with it not only with our mind, but from our heart as well. And I don't know the number. I will guess 36 million.
Okay, great. Chris, you want to give us your parting thought?
Sure. I'd echo Neil and Leona and just say that we can all find comfort in our shared experiences. This has been a very challenging year, and we are starting to see that bright side start to shine, and we just have to keep at it and work together. To Jonathan's point, the caller, have a two-way discussion, have anonymous surveys if you can, just talk to people in a way they are comfortable and build solutions for a future that is better than the one that we had known in the past. If we can be a resource, we hope we can be. If even just some information we might have is helpful, let us know. We're here to really help foster that economic recovery and that growth. I like to say that change is inevitable, change is evergreen, but growth is optional, and that's up to us. And my guess is 12 million?
Okay.
No, so I just wanted to thank everyone and echo everyone on the panel's sentiments and thank the mayor's office for allowing us to join this discussion. I think there's a great opportunity to evolve into a new normal. There's been a tremendously challenging year, but the one thing that I think is an opportunity is for everyone to share their experiences and to be able to kind of collaborate and figure out what are some things that we could make better, and how can we really evolve into this new era I believe we're really entering into, and how can we do it well? What are the things that we can kind of expand upon, and really reimagine what the city and what the residents and the businesses can experience. So if by any way us at the Workshoe team can be of resource, whether again it's our data trends, insights, we are here to support in any way, and we are really looking forward to working with the local community and supporting them by being able to feel as though that they can access a place to be able to create and do and thrive.
Great. And your guess, Allison?
Oh, I'm going to be conservative. Let's say 7 million?
Okay.
Okay.
It was actually, and Neil, you got to do better. It was 22.1 million in 2019. So really that kind of tells you how many people it draws to our central business district. And so that's why we really want to see it open again. I know there's other museums, private museums that have opened again and are doing it safely with our health protocols in place. I know one across the street from Neil is Planet Word, which was a project that DMPED worked on with the district and our partner. So we want to make sure that folks avail themselves to those opportunities too, even as we talk about the workplace that is in the central business district. So with that, we want to thank everybody for joining us. We want to thank the panelists, those who called in. Really what we're asking this week is for everybody to make sure that you're asking all DC residents to pre-register for a COVID-19 vaccination appointment. So we've been sending out mailers. We'll make sure that we get these out to businesses as well to post them. But you can go to vaccinate.dc.gov or you can call 1-855-363-0333 and get it scheduled so that you're pre-registered. And then when you do have an opportunity to get an appointment, you'll get an email, you'll get a call. So make sure that you're helping us get through this. And the best way to do that is to get folks vaccinated. And the best way to get folks vaccinated is to pre-register at vaccinate.dc.gov. So with that, we want everybody to stay safe. Be sure to keep masking up. And thank you for joining us today.